read.
Good evening and welcome to the March 7th, 2023 Gilderland Central School District Board of Education meeting. Would you all please silence your cell phones and stand for the pledge? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first on the agenda tonight, we have public comment. We have one person so far signed up for a public comment. I'll just remind if you could head to the microphone and say your name. And we have Robert DiPasquale.
Yes.
My name is Robert DiPasquale, and thank you all for having me up here. I actually just moved to Guilderland myself, and would like to say that I'm very impressed with my children's teachers of both Guilderland Elementary and Farnsworth Middle School. I think you guys have done a great job. However, I have been compelled to speak to you today about recess or lack thereof. Well, the meaning of recess, we all know what it is. It's a regular scheduled period in a school day that's either staffed by volunteers or by teachers, and it's to allow children physical activity, as well as it gives them a chance to socialize with their peers at all grade levels, from kindergarten to grade 12. And as adults, it's not something that we lose. It's something that's very necessary as every part of our day. Whether we're at work or we're at home, we take breaks throughout the day. It's not just constant work. We socialize with our peers at our work, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's not something that's lost. It's something that we all have had. We've all had recess, and it's something that we carry on to our adult lives. I give my staff, I have some employees, I encourage them to go out for lunch, I encourage them to have breaks, and they're more invigorated when they come back, you know. The United Nations has stated, recess is the right of every child. Article 31 of the United Nations Convention on Children's Rights states that every child has the right to leisure time. Taking away recess, whether it's a disciplinary measure or abolishing it in the name of work, infringes on that right. The CDC itself states recess increases their level of physical activity, which we all know that all of our children can use, especially nowadays with video games and TVs. Improves their memory, attention, and concentration, helping them to stay on task in the classroom, reducing disruptive behavior in our classrooms. So recess might even help our teachers out. One thing I'd like to add from the United Nations also, the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights recognizes the right of all children to play, regarding it as an essential part of their well-being. According to Stanford University studies, school recess offers benefits to students' well-being, and recess is a profoundly important part of the school day. In addition, recess offers opportunities for children to learn and enhance communication skills, negotiation, cooperation, sharing, problem-solving, perseverance, self-control, and conflict resolution. Now, I realize...
Mr. DiPasquale, sorry. So you've reached the 3-minute mark. Can you finish it up like within the next 30 seconds to a minute? If you can?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I was going to say, I realize this might have been brought on due to test scores dropping because of the COVID fiasco, we'll just call it like that without getting into politics. And, you know, I realize that everyone wants to push ahead and push the academic ledger forward with these children, but not allowing them a space to express themselves, to learn who their friends are, especially if they're going to a new school. Like, these are things that are important that we understand is valuable, but we're not allowing it to our children. And instead of giving them some normalcy after COVID, we shut down their recess. Where's the normalcy in that? So I beg all of you to please reconsider allowing recess to take its place as it always has been, as it is in every single G8 country, and just to allow recess to happen once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have.
We usually don't do questions for right now for public comment, but we'll take your comments back to the administration and do a follow-up.
Okay.
That's good, but I think...
could we break rules and ask some questions?
I mean, we can certainly do that. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I was going to ask if the administration could get back to us, because I personally have not known of concerns regarding recess, and I know you mentioned 2 schools that your kids go to, but it would be nice to get kind of an update to hear if there had been concerns raised at with the principals at the different elementary schools. If I didn't know that recess has been, I had not heard from other people that it was a concern.
Yeah, it's been abolished. My daughter has half recess in her school. I think she's going to Guilderland Elementary. My son at Farnsworth has no recess.
No recess.
Not even lunch, nothing. It's been abolished. And by the way, where I'm from, recess is law. Teachers can't even punish students by taking away their recess because they realize it's a fundamental right.
So
No
I guess
question?
My,
Oh,
only,
sorry?
my
Yeah.
only question would be for Marie, if you could also let us know what schools have it and for how long. I've lost track.
So we have never had recess at the middle school.
Never? Okay.
To my knowledge, we have recess at every elementary building. However, all of our playgrounds are in flux, and the weather has not been great. So I'll check in with our 5 principals and get back to everybody.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Linda, is there anybody who signed up for a public comment? Okay. So we also have the high school student representative on the agenda, but I don't see a student here, I don't think, for that. So if a student does come, we can just put them back on the agenda wherever we are. But next on the agenda is the superintendent's draft budget presentation, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Wiles.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there we go. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first kind of formal conversation around our spending plan for the 23-24 school year. We are certainly looking forward to the future, to how we can continue to serve our students well. So Dr. Van Alstyne and I are going to tag team this presentation. I'm going to kick it off. I'll hand it over to Andrew, and then we'll come back. I'll come back to wrap things up. So this is our first draft of our spending plan for next year. And here are kind of the big pieces we'll touch on during our time this evening. So we'll do a little bit of a review of our priorities in the budget development process. We will spend some time, and this will be Andrew, talking about kind of the financial context for our budget development, what's happening in the greater state and how it impacts us. And then I'll have a summary of all of the changes that we're recommending for the 22-23 school year, and we'll wrap up by outlining next steps in our budget development process. So as always, we have some key questions that guide our work as we begin this process way back in the fall, actually, with a conversation about our priorities. And as you'll recall, this year we reached out to our various stakeholder groups through a very large thought exchange to get at some of those. But we also asked, what do our students need? That question is probably more important than ever after recovering and continuing our recovery from the pandemic. We also have to ask the question, well, what can we afford now, and then what can we sustain over time in our operating budget? And I'm going to underscore the word operating budget because a lot of our discussions of late have been needed to include a conversation about our general operating budget, which we're talking about tonight, but also a number of other funding sources that we have been weaving in to help support our work through the COVID relief funds. And so part of what we'll talk about tonight is how the district has used federal COVID relief funds so far and how will remaining funds be used. And I want to just say that last bullet won't be a comprehensive review of all of our COVID dollars, but rather the ones that intersect with our general operating budget, because we have capital projects happening and we have a lot of other moving parts. We can do a more comprehensive discussion of all of our federal dollars down the road a little bit, but today we're going to focus on those ones that weave in and out of our day-to-day operations here in the district. So as always, we're going to start with our mission. We aim for that very special day in June when we hand diplomas to our graduates as they culminate their 13-year journey here in Guilderland. And everything is driven by our mission. I won't read it to you, but I will point out in that third line, all caps, that word all, when we're talking about how we serve the children here in Guilderland. And I really like to think about all as in each and every, because we have a renewed commitment to recognizing and affirming each and every one of our children, regardless of their wealth, their poverty, their race, their religion, their culture, their language, their gender identity. Each and every child matters to us, and we have to keep that in mind as we're thinking about our programs and how we fund them. And that gets reaffirmed again when we talk about our vision statement, which again, we're thinking about all of our children, each and every, being in an environment that's safe and welcoming, that's rigorous, that's interesting, that's engaging, and that's going to prepare them for the world that comes beyond school. So I'm going to summarize briefly the results of our thought exchange. You'll remember we did this back in November, and we had a tremendous level of participation, both in terms of the numbers of people who submitted thoughts and the numbers of thoughts, but also the numbers of ratings of those thoughts. So I've distilled it into one page. So we asked parents, faculty and staff, and students on what they believe to be the priorities for us as we look ahead to the 2023-24 school year. And there are a lot of similar themes across the three stakeholder groups. Among our parents, top of the list was a real concern about school safety, controlling student behavior, the climate and culture and level of safety that we feel in our buildings. I will remind you we had a very rough fall in terms of that, so this was clearly high in the minds of our families. And along that, we heard a lot about school resource officers from our families. And then right below that was the notion around class sizes, either maintaining low class sizes or in certain cases trying to reduce them. School lunch was a theme across all of the stakeholders. School lunch program is not supported through our general operating budget, so it's good to notice that this is an important thing for us to focus on, and we will, but it happens to the side of the plan that we have before you for tonight. And then, of course, also of high importance was, how do we improve student learning? How do we close those academic gaps that became exposed as a result of the pandemic? Our faculty and staff also were terrific participants in our thought exchange. They too had their top priority around school safety, controlling disruptive behavior, feeling safe and secure here in our buildings. But their next highest priority was around, again, maintaining and lowering class size. We heard a great deal about class sizes at Farnsworth Middle School. You'll be hearing a lot more about them tonight. We also saw some advocacy to increase salaries for our teaching assistants and to add more TA positions. I think as we've seen our students return from the pandemic and come back into more quote-unquote normal times, those teaching assistants have been tremendously helpful to our teachers. They're just very hard to come by. We still have open teaching positions across the district that we've had all year, so that's been a challenge. The increased focus, or continued focus actually, on mental health, social emotional wellness. I think everyone is feeling that, from every staff and faculty and everyone who's in the building, including our students, that this is a priority. We're still working on this. And then they too wanted to focus on student learning, and our faculty and staff talked a lot about literacy. And then last but not least, our students, they love to talk about Wi-Fi and not having sites blocked, and I see that our Director of Technology is smiling, but we also, we talk about safety and security, and having a good handle on what sites can be accessed by the people in our buildings is an element of that safety and security that we have to take seriously. I know it's not always popular, and it's often frustrating. We continue to hear from our students about our facilities, the ceilings and the bathrooms. I'm happy to say, again, that's a topic that is not addressed in our general operating budget, but we are continuing our work through our capital construction projects that include those very things. Students also noted their thoughts about school lunch, wanting more choices, noting the cost, and again, that is a priority for us just outside of the realm of the operating budget. Students also mentioned school safety, in particular lockdown procedures here at the high school. And I know since this thought exchange was done, the high school actually made some little videos to help students better understand how lockdown procedures work, so they have a good understanding when they are in places that are not the typical classroom. So what do you do in a lockdown if you're in the cafeteria or outside or in a hallway or in a restroom? So we appreciate that extra work. And then last but not least, this isn't exactly a budgetary item, but we heard a lot from our students about recognizing additional holidays on our school calendar. And as you know, a few weeks back, we adopted our school calendar for next year, and we do have an additional holiday on there to recognize in April, Eid. So we appreciate all of that feedback. And you'll see these themes recurring in the work that's going to be ahead of us. The board also did its own thought exchange, and 6 priorities, again, very similar to the other stakeholders. But top of the list was to make sure we maintain programs and services. I think there was a strong sense that this is not a time to pull supports away from our children or to pull opportunities away from our children. And along the same vein, we need to continue to focus on our student and staff mental health, continue to develop a plan to build respect for all. I think this is a nod to our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We just recently did a little bit of work around number 4, which is to refocus on the goals of the board. How are we doing? Do we need to adjust them? Do we need to refocus them a little bit? Number 5 was, of course, continue the work we started last year around class sizes at Farnsworth Middle School, and rounding out the list was, again, concern around student and staff safety on our campuses. So the planning process here in Guilderland, we actually start in the fall, right around October, on thinking through the work that needs to be done, and we start by reflecting on the decisions we made last April. We say, we made decisions when we adopt a budget in April. The community tells us if they agree in May, and then several months later, we live them. And so the question is, how are they going? And we make adjustments at that point, and we build from there as well. And part of that work is a detailed analysis of student needs. The primary one of those is enrollment. How many students do we have, and where are they in our system? But we also talk a lot about student academics, the social and emotional supports they need, and how we can continue to offer robust and varied opportunities for learning both within the classroom and outside of the classroom. So both our academic and our extracurricular activities are important to us. And then we also spend a lot of time looking at our non-instructional costs, because that's what kind of keeps us going. What are our facilities needs? What are our transportation challenges? Those are the 2 big things that we have felt a lot in the last few years. So in summary, this budget tries to accomplish the following list of things. We want to maintain or lower class sizes with a particular focus on Farnsworth Middle School. We want to preserve existing programs and services for students, and among those, particularly social and emotional supports for students. This budget also anticipates that federal COVID relief grants are going to go away. There's a round of them going away this fall in 2023, and then the end of them in 2024. And we have to be mindful about how we've used those funds, and if there are things that we want to continue, how do we build them into the operating budget? The next bullet really hits at the challenge of this budget. It reflects increased costs in several areas that have been outside of our realm of control and decision-making. Our contract transportation costs to deliver children to out-of-district schools and sites has gone through the roof and has had a tremendous impact. Our health insurance premiums have gone up after several years of being very modest or flat. We are feeling that increase now. And then, as we've been talking about for weeks and perhaps months, the numerous tax certiorari cases that have been ongoing in our community are resulting in tax refunds that you will see reflected in this budget. The good news is this budget that we'll be sharing with you does not exceed our tax levy limit. And so, as written today, prior to any adjustments the board may decide to make, it would pass with a simple majority of 50% plus one if it were to go to the community in this form in May. So just a couple stats to kind of refocus where we have been, reflecting back on the budget that we are living right now that was approved back on May 17th, 2022. It was a $109 million budget. Was passed by 68, margin of 68 to 31. So we had good support from our community for the spending plan, which included a budget-to-budget increase of 4.68% and an estimated tax rate increase of 2.98%. And then you can see the full number of students that we serve across all programs, including out-of-district programs, is 4,918. 715 full-time staff, 239 part-time, so close to 1,000 employees to make all of this happen. So a big operation. And this enrollment data is really the starting point for all of our work. I have to give a nod to Mr. Neil Sanders because putting together the enrollment projections for this year was one of the last official acts of his work here before he handed the baton off to Dr. Van Alstyne. So you can see our current enrollment for 22-23 is 4,855. We're edging up to 4,875 for next year. And I know in your appendices you have kind of the longer term projections for our enrollment, and we are indeed inching up over time, which is good. And then just a little bit of history on our budget vote approval. This is the last 6 years of our votes, beginning with last year and going all the way back to 2017-18. If you look at our levy increases, last year was 2.98, going back down the list to 2017-18 at 2.11. You know, we have a 2% tax cap in New York State. If you do the average on that, it comes out to 2%. So at least over time, we average right where the goal is to keep taxes under control for our community. So we've been doing very well in terms of community support over the recent years. And with that, I'm going to take a pause and hand things over to Dr. Van Alstyne to give some context.
Thank you.
I'm going to go this way.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with the state level context before getting into the big picture finances of the proposed budget. On February 1st, Governor Hochul unveiled her executive budget proposal for next year. For education, this is noteworthy because this includes, for the first time, the state providing every school district its full foundation aid for next year. Foundation aid is a research-driven formula that asks a few questions. How much does it cost to successfully educate students? How much does it cost to provide resources for high-need students, that is, economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, English language learners? And then of that cost, how much does a school district's fiscal capacity support? So how much of that money can be raised through local resources? Then the idea is the state with foundation aid provides the difference. As I said, the majority of school districts in each given year do not receive their full foundation aid, so they are not receiving what the state says they need to successfully educate their students. So it's noteworthy, and we fully support next year all school districts receiving this. Within this foundation aid increase, Governor Hochul proposed a new set-aside that is a carve-out of this foundation aid that says a district has to spend X amount of its foundation aid on what she's calling high-impact tutoring. For our school district, the set-aside is $530,181. You'll see when we go through the budget that is something we have set aside. We are not making a detailed plan for that yet because this is still a proposal. The way the state's budget process works is the governor makes her proposal. In a week or two, the legislatures will unveil their versions of a budget for next year. They'll all sit together in a room and knock on almost wood. On April 1st, we will see enacted state budget for next year. So we do not know what it would entail for a set-aside, if it will make it, what the rules will be, et cetera. And then the final notable proposal within the governor's budget is a significant expansion of universal pre-kindergarten funding. This is funding that is based on a number of slots, and each district has a predetermined number of slots and then associated funding with those slots. Because of this, it is very unlikely that we will be able to accommodate the number of slots that we would theoretically have funding for. This is the layout of the formula aids. The top line number, that foundation aid one, is historic and significant. As we run through these, overall, our state aid is going up a little over 22% for next year. This is a tremendously valuable influx of state aid, and as I'm going to explain in a few slides, comes at a very fortuitous time because we have some very rising expenses that are almost fully out of our control, as Dr. Wiles alluded to a moment ago. Then the other major part of our funding is our local levy. This provides the majority of our school district support, and it's subject, for the last 10 years, the levy has been subject to a district-specific tax cap. This is the property tax cap. It runs through a formula that begins with the previous year's levy, makes adjustments for inflation, growth in property values. There are spending that can be set aside from that, the aid you would get on capital projects. All of this goes into the formula and then produces the levy amount, levy cap amount, and then if the levy is at or below that, we need a simple 50% majority support, or 50% plus one majority support, and if not, we would need a 60% supermajority. Our initial tax levy limit calculation for next year starts with last year's levy. The tax-based growth factor is the state's calculation of how much our property value has grown. This is support for the levy that's not resulting in an increase in taxes. And that produces then an adjusted levy amount. We factor out payments in lieu of taxes, look at what do we spend on capital projects after accounting for state aid for them, and this gives us an adjusted levy amount. That is what's subject to the 2% or inflation figure. Last year was the first year where inflation was exponentially higher than the 6% figure. So last year, in the calendar year, inflation was 8%, and which is much different than 2%. And that 8% figure will be responsible for some of those costs that are out of our control. All of this goes into the formula, and that produces our tax levy limit. Our maximum allowable increase for next year is 3.01%. The proposal we're going to walk through tonight is a year-over-year increase of 8.99% and an estimated levy increase of 2.76%. 2.76, well below that 3.01% figure. If we look at the tax levy impact, the tax levy would increase $2.16 million, well below the $2.3 million increase we have. So we're $195,000 below the cap with the proposal we're going to talk about tonight. Big picture, vast majority of our budget goes to salary and benefits, 77.5%. Then contract services, debt services, BOCES. BOCES spending is very important because BOCES spending drives state aid. We receive state aid the following year based on what we spend on BOCES services. So if we spend, $100 in BOCES, we're going to get $50-something in state aid next year. Breaking it down to categories, professional salaries are mostly responsible for the salary increases. The employee benefits line is a big one. That is due to the health insurance increases that we are facing. Other notable ones, contract services and debt service. The debt service is taking on the capital project. Again, this also results in state aid, so we will get building aid in the next year and going on when we file final cost reports for projects that are wrapping up. So there is a long-term plan for managing debt and balancing it with state aid. I want to talk about 7 things that are driving the increase in this budget. The first, capital borrowing. Again, that's going to be balanced out by state aid, but we do have a year-over-year increase in spending for our borrowing. The second major factor are the tax certiorari claims. This budget line represents what we would have to borrow to fund paying back judgments against us if all of the cases do not work out well. All right, so this is a very significant hit if things don't work out for us. Third large one, health insurance. We have a very large year-over-year increase, but as Dr. Wiles alluded to, this is after years of relatively flat increases. So going back 5 years, even with this increase, we're looking at under 3% a year in annual growth in health insurance. This 1-year jump is a culmination of a couple things. We are self-insured. During the pandemic, a lot of health expenses went down because people weren't going to the doctor, and then those rebounded. And we are seeing that at the district. This is a statewide, nationwide trend, but this is a large jump after years of flat. The contract transportation, this is in service of out-of-district transportation mostly. Most but not all students with disabilities, also McKinney-Vento students, so homeless and foster transportation. Contract transportation is very expensive. Fuel, this is where we see inflation, the rising costs of fuel and use of fuel. Professional services are associated with students with disabilities again. Those are money we pay to get our students educated. And the legal expenses are going back to point number 2, the tax certiorari claims. They're also expensive to defend. So we have a significant increase in our legal expenses for lawyers representing us in those claims. So this bundle of 7 factors is almost 63% of the increase next year. And if we put the cost drivers along with salary increases that are contractual, we're at 84% of next year's budget increase. Right? So the increase, as I said earlier, is driven by factors that we do not have direct control over. and that's responsible for most of it. Then the next two large things are the high-intensity tutoring. Again, we don't know where the governor is going to go with that proposal. And then the middle school class size reduction, which was identified in the thought exchange, board priority, is a district-wide emphasis with this budget. And finally, looking at the sources of revenue, pulling all those together, I want to highlight the red line. So last year, we used reserves. The $300,000 difference is we had $300,000 in the tax certiorari reserve that was exhausted. We also appropriated fund balance, that is the unrestricted funding, to complete the budget. Next year's budget now is not appropriating any unrestricted fund balance and is managing the reserves as we have as part of our long-range plan. This is the revenue total that gets us to that $9.879 million increase year over year. And then to walk through the specific proposals that we are including to accomplish this, I will turn it over to Dr. Wiles.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to start with elementary and work my way up. This chart has a ton of information, but what it attempts to do is summarize our class size goals for 23-24. What it shows is by grade and by building, the current class size average by each grade, and then on the far right you see the overall average by grade across the district. Those are some very enviable numbers. As you can see, they're all in the low 20s or even below 20. The shaded areas under the school names, there's 2 in Altamont and 2 in Westmere, are what we call bubble sections. Those are classrooms where, based on our projections as of right now, those average class sizes are approaching or at the upper guideline that we have for our students. K2, we go 18 to 23 students, and 3-5, 23 to 25 students. So what that means is we'll spend the next several months watching enrollment in those classrooms to determine whether or not we have to create another section in order to keep those numbers reasonable. So you'll see underneath the chart a little asterisk that says under review, so we will be watching those. I can assure those who are watching here tonight that the elementary principals remind me quite regularly about numbers changing in those classrooms so that we can plan in a timely way in case we need to dip into those 4 unassigned positions that are now still included in the budget. So just a reminder, these 4 positions are right now not assigned to any building or grade, but should we have a number of additional students show up in 5th grade at Westmere, we very well could go to one of those FTEs and create another classroom. So we continue to monitor this. It's usually by June where we're making some decisions about whether or not we have to create some additional sections. Also at the elementary level, we have 2 other increases that we're recommending. These are both connected to enrollment, current enrollment trends. One is a .3 music teacher for vocal and general music, and this would be to make sure we can cover all of the sections of elementary music across the district. And then we have a .1 art teacher who would be at Linwood. This .1 is currently funded out of this year's unassigned pool, but we know that the need will continue next year, so we are going to go ahead and put it in the budget. Next is middle school. We're going to talk a lot about middle school. Favorable at 23.31. That's because a year ago now, we decided to create that extra 2 sections of 8th grade. If we were to do nothing for the middle school next year, the class sizes for 6th grade would be 27.5. For 7th grade, they'd be 28.5, and at 8th grade, they'd be 22.94. However, this time last year, we said we would continue to keep this on our priority list, and so we're keeping our word on that. And here is our plan for the upcoming school year. We would like to transition from 14 homerooms in grades 6 and 7 to 16 homerooms in each of those grades for next year. Smaller class sizes helps in any number of ways. That helps us with gaps in learning, it helps us with behavior issues, and it certainly helps us with social, emotional, and other mental health issues to have fewer youngsters crammed into classrooms. And this is particularly important in those rooms where space really matters. Places like our labs and our FACS classrooms, where students are on top of each other and sometimes in ways that make them less than safe. We've been looking at our enrollment trend at Farnsworth, and this is a longer-term trend. It's not like we have a couple bubbles and this is going to go away, but rather these numbers are likely to continue into the future, which is, frankly, a very good thing. So we started the phase-in last year, and we're continuing it this year. It is a significant financial investment. So to transition to 16 sections in grades 6 and 7, for the core areas, or for sections, it's 5.6 FTEs, which is 4 in the core areas of math, science, social studies, and English, and another 1.6 in what we call the encore areas, art, music, PE, health, technology, and family and consumer sciences. And when we do that, we will result in class size averages next year at grade 6 at 24, and at grade 7 at 24.9, which is much better than nearly 30. To do that costs $458,400, so it comes with a significant price tag. We also want to be mindful of our students in their world languages classes, because simply changing to a higher number of homerooms does not address that. So we have built in an additional 0.8 FTEs so that class sizes are also smaller in Italian and French and Spanish as well, at a cost of $67,200 for a grand total of $525,600. And this is just another way of looking at that same data. We have a couple other recommendations for the middle school. First is included the cost to continue the school resource officer at Farnsworth Middle School. As you know, our safety committee, our district safety committee, and the SRO subcommittee had several conversations over the last several months about the possibility of adding a second SRO to the district. We've had one for the last several years assigned to the high school. The Guilderland Police Department were part of those conversations, and I can recall a meeting this fall. The question was, well, how soon could we put an SRO in Farnsworth Middle School? And I said, well, the soonest we could plan for it would be the fall of 2023, because we would be going through the exact process that we're going through tonight, which is to talk about the budget. So Chief McNally has, for the balance of this school year, starting right after the start of the new calendar year, has assigned an SRO to Farnsworth Middle School. So right now we have 2 SROs in the district, one at the high school, one at the middle school. This $56,000 represents the ongoing placement of the SRO in the 23-24 school year and beyond. A couple other changes noted here. One is it's a half an hour a day of additional monitor time. We're currently doing this this year out of unassigned FTEs. This is to supervise the students who take a bus in the early morning from the high school here to Farnsworth Middle School in order to take studio art. They get there before anybody else, and they need some supervision. So that's going to be included. And then the last thing for the middle school, our strings program in the district has been growing in leaps and bounds over time. Currently, the lesson sizes at the middle school are one teacher to 7.1 students in a music lesson. That is quite high in order for a teacher to give much at all attention to an individual. So this additional 0.4 would reduce those lesson sizes down to 5.7 students. And then at the high school, we are looking to add a .3 science teacher. Doing so would restore some elective offerings and round out our ability to provide academic intervention support for our students. We also have an enrollment-driven request to add a section of comprehensive skills. This is a business program for some of our students with disabilities where they are actually doing school-to-work activities right in the building. Enrollment requires that we have another section of that so the class sizes are manageable. We also would like to add the half an hour to the day of one of our reading teaching assistants. We're actually doing this year through the unassigned. It's a terrific way to be able to provide additional support to students after school, and also for the other 2 TAs who are there through that time to collaborate and work with the reading teachers and make sure we're doing a nice and coherent and thorough job supporting our students. And then last but not least, for the high school, Mr. Piscatelli has asked us to consider adding some additional hours of monitor time. This is really under the theme of additional safety, security, supervision in the high school, particularly during lunch periods when many of the monitors need to be in the cafeterias. We would like to have extra people available to be in the hallways to make sure that they are safe and monitored and given the attention that they need. A couple more staffing pieces. One is the addition of an elementary special education teacher. This would be a position assigned to Linwood. This position is currently funded through a grant, but we know that the needs will continue next year, so this is an example of one of those items we're pulling back from the grants and putting into the general operating budget so that when the grant dollars go away, we still can support the need that we know that we have. Andrew mentioned this one, the $97,000 for professional services. We have a number of students who attend private schools, parochial schools outside of the district, but who have IEPs. We are billed for the special education services of those students that are provided in those outside placements, and the projected cost for next year is $97,000. And then finally, 1.3, or finally in this section, 1.3 FTEs for English as a new language. These positions also are currently funded through grants, and again, we're needing to pull them back because we anticipate this need to last beyond the life of our federal grants. A couple other things. This are related to athletics. The first item is $4,000. This is related to our modified running coaches who for years have been paid under what we call a extramural rate, which is actually not the contractual rate that they should be paid. So last June, Dave Austin and the representatives from the Guilderland Teachers Association looked at this rate, realized that we do in fact need to pay them the rate that is in the contract. We had not budgeted for it, so we agreed we would budget for it in the upcoming budget. So that's the $4,000. We're also budgeting $5,000 to support the coach for our upcoming eSport team. Yes, we got a lovely grant to purchase equipment and technology to be part of the eSports ethos, but now we need coaches. The $15,035 are connected to a lot of increases in costs associated with Section 2, the Suburban Council, and officials' fees, which are also negotiated in their own contracts. The other thing I'll point out here, though, because it's a success story, and you all know this because we've talked a lot about our running programs in recent months here, but we have so many more students participating in running activities that our entrance fees go up because there are more children. So this is a reflection of the success of that program. And this last one might be my favorite proposal of the whole budget. We are looking to start a new unified team for the fall season, Unified Bocce. So that $2,500 will support a coach and equipment to make it possible for our unified teams to have a sport in all 3 seasons. So now you know where my bias is. On to the non-instructional realm. We've mentioned this before under contract services. This big number, $560,000, is connected to our out-of-district runs for transportation. This is a function of the shortage of drivers. There is no reason to believe that shortage is going to let up anytime soon, so we need to make sure we have sufficient resources set aside in order to pay for those costs. The lead testing, we have new standards to meet around testing for lead. They have lowered the standard to 5 parts per billion to 15 parts per billion. We have 72 outlets across the district that fall within that area that we need to do testing and likely remediation. The $30,000 is an estimate of what that will cost in order to do that. And then lastly, 10 years ago, Cliff Nooney reduced his staff by 1 custodial worker and has never been able to restore that position, even though our enrollment has rebounded since 10 years ago, and we have far more cleaning protocols as a result of the pandemic. So this is a custodial worker who would split his or her time between Pine Bush and or Linwood. A couple more items. We are looking to transition a position in the business office from a senior account clerk to a junior accountant. There would be about a $10,500 difference in the salary. We are looking for a more advanced skill set, more of an accounting skill set, based on the needs that we have around grant management and the accounting that goes along with it. It is quite involved. There is a lot riding on it for accuracy and for planning, and we want to be able to attract appropriate candidates who are qualified to do that work. Schoolfront platform is $38,580. This is a HR-based platform that over time will help us with really all aspects related to managing HR functions, from recruitment to hiring to onboarding to safety and security. It's a upfront cost. I think we'll be purchasing this through BOCES, but it should help us be tremendously more efficient over the long term. Many of our neighboring school districts have already made the transition to this platform and have walked away from what we currently use, which is something called OLAS, and we are hopeful that doing so will help us become much more efficient and effective. Which kind of leads me to the next item, which is the increase in printing costs that we have. This is really a function of inflation. Schoolfront platform will help us over time diminish our needs for printing dramatically, but we are not quite there yet. So the $18,000 reflects the increased costs of printing that we'll need going forward, but we're hoping to see that come down dramatically as we move forward. Okay. Oh, there we go. For some reason, there we go. A couple more words about this intense. Did I skip something?
Yeah, you just have those slides.
Oh, sorry about that. 2 more pieces. These are again related to data. In our last conversation around board goals, we've been talking a lot about being able to regularly look at our data to analyze attendance, achievement, participation in activities. We don't have currently a efficient, user-friendly tool to let our principals do this work without constantly turning, frankly, to Mike Bastian to say, can you run a report on this? Can you run a report on that? The field has really developed to produce tools that make this at the fingertips of our administrators. And we've looked at a number of these, but there's something called Tableau that we would like to purchase through BOCES to help us with this data analysis work, so that it is not Mike Bastian in an office doing data analysis or Rachel Anderson doing data analysis, but really all of our principals and others. So we're monitoring how we're doing on a variety of important factors. And then last but not least, Andrew mentioned this earlier, we have been making a concerted effort to coordinate more of our purchases of technology through BOCES rather than doing them on our own. Couple really positive things with that. One, they do the data privacy reviews under Ed Law 2D for us, and we generate aid by doing it. So we are continuing to transition over to the BOCES in order to purchase the needed software titles and to keep our data safe, secure, and private. And then just a couple words about this intensive tutoring set aside. As Andrew mentioned, there's a line in our aid run for $530,000 to do what has been called intensive tutoring, which is defined as 2 times a week for at least 30 minutes in small groups or individually. And they want to target students in grades 3 through 8 who are at risk at falling below standards. There's a lot of conceptual challenges with this set-aside. For one, if it's a set-aside, it's not foundation aid, and we were promised full funding of foundation aid. So this literally takes $500,000 off the table for us to make good decisions about. There's a lot of restrictions around this money, including this middle bullet that says funds must be used to supplement, not supplant, anything else we're doing. Well, we're currently doing lots of AIS and lots of other supports. This tutoring would need to be beyond that, either before school, after school, on a weekend. We can't hire tutors with the federal dollars that we have in order to accomplish this now, where we have about like $100,000 that we can't hire people to do. So we have real worries about how we're going to spend $500,000 to hire people to do this work. So what's happening is our inboxes are flooded with vendors who want to sell us products to purchase this tutoring. The reality is there's a strong effort across the state to have this set aside go away, go back into our general foundation aid allocations, and let us do the work we're doing in ways that make sense district by district and not in a kind of cookie cutter kind of way. I can't say that 3 times fast, I'm sure. So we're in a wait and see mode on what to do with this $530,000. When the final budget is determined, obviously, if we have to do it, we will do it, and we're continuing to look at plans. We are going to visit some of these vendors and get some demos and so on, but we're going to hold off until we're closer to budget adoption to lay out our exact plan on that. So the last thing I want to do is weave in some comments about how we've used our grant-funded dollars. So on this slide, you are seeing a list of staff members and activities that are currently, as in this year, being funded through grants that we will continue to fund through grants next year. So these are things that are working for us now. We know we have the resources to support them one more year, and so we're going to. And I won't read all of those. You can see it's quite a few positions around pupil support services, recognizing the social emotional needs, special education, reading, our coaches, ENL, and some of our summer curriculum work has been funded this year through these dollars and will continue to be funded next year. We also have some new requests to be funded next year through these dollars as we try to make sure we maximize them. And you may remember in the giant list of requests that I sent you that had been put together by our administrators, one of them was a request to expand the staffing that supports our work around DEI. So we are proposing to use through federal grants next year the equivalent of a FTE to have a teacher on special assignment who would, in effect, help Matt Pinchinat do a variety of things. I'll point out that just yesterday, our 7 equity teams presented their equity action plans after working for several months now with Natalie McGee and Progression Partners. There is a ton of work that is now spelled out in these plans, and Matt cannot do them all, can't do all of that himself, even with the members of the team pitching in to do it. So we'd like to try this model for a year with the grant dollars and see how it goes. So that's included in our federal dollars. And then you see a variety of materials, supplies, equipment repair, things that our team is hoping to have, but we didn't have room in the regular budget, but they're one-time expenses that make good sense to use within the federal dollars. That's the end. So just to summarize, here's what we tried to do when we put all this together. We wanted to honor the priorities that people told us about, particularly around class size at Farnsworth and student safety. We didn't want to stand here tonight and tell you that anything was going to no longer exist as a result of the budget. We're compelled to address a number of pretty significant increases that we can't control. Contract transportation, health insurance increase, and these large tax refunds. We also want to respect our taxpayers, which is why you don't see us going all the way up to that tax cap. We're trying to be mindful of how much our taxpayers in this community chip in already to support the important work that we do. We're also trying to be smart about the end of federal COVID dollars. We don't want to leave any money on the table, but we also don't want to spend it on things that we need and then can't afford anymore. And then always, there's still unknowns. The legislative process is underway in downtown. So we're going to make some adjustments between now and in April, early April, when the board is asked to adopt the budget. The final state aid allocation, I don't believe anyone is going to give us more aid, but they might take that aid that's being used as a set-aside and give it to us in a more unrestricted manner. And then we are in the midst of still tax certiorari claims. We've got a settlement meeting coming up here soon, so more to come on that. So as we look ahead to 24-25, this is all about looking ahead. We expect relatively flat foundation aid for future budgets. We saw a 22% increase this year. Please keep in mind that some of that included the $1.4 million in pre-K money that we will not be able to spend, and also the set-aside for the tutoring. We have to continue to project contractual salary increases. We agreed to them. We need to fund them. The grant funds, well, that'll give you time to digest our 45 slides and our many pages of documents and appendices. We'll also have the leadership team members here, so if there are specific questions, they can come to the podium as well and answer. We are planning our virtual focus groups on the week of March 20th. There'll be 4 of these. These will be for community members, parents, to come online, an online forum for an hour and ask questions and give feedback on this very presentation. We have a workshop on the 28th. The board adopts the budget on the 4th. May 2 is the hearing and the budget vote on the 4th. May 2 is the hearing, and the budget vote and election is on May 16th. Whew. So I don't even have a slide here that says questions, although we'll absolutely take some, just to, if there's any clarification. Go ahead, Blanca, and then Rebecca.
Sorry, I was trying to do math when you were explaining the DEI line. Can you explain that one more time? New ARP, ESS, ER funded replacement.
Yes, so we have a 1.0 teacher on special assignment. We have a formula that we use in the budget when we're doing a 1.0 FTE teacher. They're all $84,000.
So, but is it to help Matt?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I wanted.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, in the interest of full transparency, he had asked for secretarial help, but that's not really, when he listed what he needed help with, it's someone else to go out to schools, to teach model lessons, to do PD, to meet with students who are wanting to talk, to meet with teachers who want help with their lessons, to meet with librarians to help them think about their collections. That's an instructional person.
I'm so glad that was added. Thanks.
Rebecca?
If I could just say one thing on that.
Sure.
I know everybody read the draft regulations for the potential anti-racism policy last night and today. In there is a lot of potential work that's going to be added to Matt's ledger. So I would say that this is somebody that's going to be dearly needed. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Rebecca?
I think you said this, Andrew, but this budget does not require any fund balance funds, right?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, sorry. It appropriates reserves in line with the long-range plan, but does not add unrestricted fund balance or anything that's not part of the long-range plan. So there is a small amount of reserve usage, because that's what we've been studying.
Go ahead, Seema.
I had a couple of questions, but maybe for next time.
Sure.
One was about, so someone had asked if GPD would be willing to pay for the SRO for next year. So first, will they? If not, what has happened so far at FMS with the SRO? What kind of impact has it had there? Also related to that, with the thought exchange, the safety comments, especially at the beginning of the year. And I think some of the students who had come to the board meeting to talk about safety, but also, I got the sense that when they talked about bathrooms, not so much facilities, but also safety with that too. And I didn't know if that was what was being considered, like monitors, or the sense I got from that meeting where students came was that they also did not feel safe using the bathrooms, particularly at the high school. And so that was just something that stood out to me. Also, for the next meeting, I think following up on Rebecca's question about the fund balance, could we get an idea of what it looks like? Because we're not putting anything back in, correct?
At the moment, no.
Okay. Okay. And so I guess if any of these things change, like, it was at a consideration to put more back into the fund balance, and I don't know if that's something we could talk about next time. I also just had a comment too about the DEI teacher on a special assignment, that I'm glad that it's there, because it's super apparent from the work this year that there's a ton of work. And then the intensive tutoring, I know Dr. Wiles, you said that you don't have that much info about it yet, but is that like during the school day time, or is that outside of school time?
That's a good question. So I think it could be during the school day. The problem with that is we would be pulling children from their class and missing instruction while they're getting tutored. So I think that's probably counterproductive.
Okay.
So the idea, I think, is before school, after school, evenings, weekends. It's the when you do it. I mean, after school, we would want to do it when we have late buses. Otherwise, now we're putting a burden on parents potentially to pick up children.
Right.
So we have staff here, but they're already being paid, and we can't supplant their payment to pay them to tutor.
Right.
So I think it sounds good on paper, but the reality of, like, how do you make this actually happen is murky at best.
And then the last question I had was about, sorry, I'm looking because I wrote things down as you were talking.
That's fine.
About the lead testing, and does the state aid, do they give, is any of that aidable? I guess is what I'm asking, for lead testing?
I believe there's building aid on some of the lead testing.
Oh, okay. That always comes like after.
We can circle back around with Cliff on that one. I think you're right, there is building aid on it eventually.
I was just curious because
But the standard is lowered significantly, so we have more to do.
I was going to say, then there's so many places to do it across
Yes.
the district. Okay.
72.
Okay. Yeah, so those were my general questions, I guess, at this point.
Go ahead, Blanca.
To Seema's point about the bathroom, the safety in the bathroom, the added monitors, I know that it says lunch periods, but I wonder if you can ask Mike, do we have monitors that check the bathrooms? I'm assuming we do.
We do, yes.
Okay, because yeah, that I do remember also that was a big concern.
Well, because I was thinking the cost is similar to what is there for the SRO, and so I'm like, oh, if they consider funding the SRO for another year, that looks like you get a lot of monitor time at the, I don't know, maybe at the high school it would be, if safety is such a concern. Because it sounded like, at least from the kids that spoke, it was more concerns about the safety at the high school, I think, but maybe this was months ago, so.
Did you get a chance to ask about?
I did.
If they would, because they offered us a full year, and we only took them up on it for half.
So I did speak with Chief McNally shortly after you had raised the question, and he reminded me, kind of as I mentioned in my comments, that their thinking at the time was they really wanted to help us in 23, 24. And, I had said that there was no way mid-year or after the budget was already done that we could fund placing a second SRO in the district, like, for this year, and that's when he said, well, if it's a timing thing around the budget, I can help you until you get through that process. So that's kind of where we are now. Whether or not, he really hasn't, all he's done is assigned an individual to our building. He hasn't added any staff. He's simply said, this particular person, he's doing a great job, by the way, at the middle school. And I can have Mike Blaster speak to Seema's question too, like, what's been the impact? What kinds of things is the SRO doing? And then probably the other thing that Mike Piscatelli can comment on is what's been the impact on our high school SRO, whose capacity to do the work here is much better because he isn't spread as thin. But they'll be here next week, and you can ask them the particulars. Any other questions? All right, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wiles. So we are just at the start of the agenda now. Can I have a motion to accept the consent items? This includes the minutes of the February 14th and March 1st meetings, CPSE, CSE recommendations, personnel action, textbooks, and financials. Rebecca, second Blanca. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay, passes 9-0. Next, we'll go to information items, curriculum and instruction. Rachel?
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start with the more boring things. I have 3 textbooks, trade books that are up for your information tonight that we'll be asking for your approval on in April. I have Ghost by Jason Reynolds, The Benefits of Being an Octopus by Anne Braden, and Maybe He Just Likes You by Barbara D. The 3 approval forms should be linked in the agenda. If anyone wants to review the books or borrow them until April, I have them here tonight for you. I also wanted to give you an update on UPK. We have been planning for the 23-24 UPK school year. We are planning to start taking registrations next Monday, March 13th. There will be information on our website, and the forms and all that information will be available through April 6th. So that is our registration window from March 13th to April 6th. We're asking that all UPK students be registered during that time period. So even if people have sent inquiries previously, we need them to actually fill out new forms because the forms have changed from what they were previously. All students who turn 4 years old by December 1st, so in other words, if they have a birthday between December 2nd, 2018 and December 1st, 2019, those students are the ones that are eligible for UPK this upcoming school year. We are mandated by the state to do a lottery selection process to fill our UPK slots, so we'll be doing that once the registration window closes. And we will also be sending notifications with all of this information out via email and social media to parents who have students of eligible age. We right now plan to continue to work with our 4 community partners. That's All Saints Catholic Academy, Christ the King Early Childhood Learning Center, Kids Corner Child Care and Learning Center, and St. Madeleine Sophie School. So those are our 4 community partners, and we will be renewing contracts with those 4 sites in the upcoming months. And we are still working with the sites to determine final number of seats, but it's looking like we will have between 90 and 110 seats, and we did have 110 this school year, so we're being relatively consistent. We're just working with one of the sites to see if they're going to maintain the class sizes they have now or reduce by 1 section. Any questions on UPK? All right, then I will end with the fun stuff. Some accolades tonight. One of our high school English teachers, Alicia Wine, will receive the Bertha Brimmer Medal from UAlbany School of Education. The award celebrates excellence and devotion to teaching and service to the university. She will be recognized at a later date this spring with an awards ceremony that will be held on the UAlbany campus. Also, congratulations to several students in Diane Guerin's 10th grade English class who participated in and were recognized for their work in the Northern District of New York Federal Court Bar Association's annual Constitution Contest. GHS students were recognized for their work in both the poster and the video categories. Among the top students, there were also several honorable mentions. Our top finishing students, were in the poster category. Angela Tofik won second place and a prize of $500 for her poster of the 27 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Novalee Lavin won third place and a prize of $250 for his poster on the Bill of Rights. And in the video performance category, Miranda Patorti tied for third place with a prize of $250, and Kate Murphy won fourth place and a prize of $100. And an additional student accolade, Jane Fanning, a 10th grade student, was selected by the New York State League of Women Voters to participate in this year's Students Inside Albany Conference. Jane was nominated by 2 of her current social studies teachers, Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Kopp. The experience is designed to increase students' awareness of their responsibility in representative government and provide the tools necessary for meeting that responsibility. This conference will bring together high school students from across the state to learn about New York State government and the process by which citizens can participate in the policy-making arena. So, congratulations to those students and teachers.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. Next, we have Superintendent Information, Dr. Wiles.
All right, thank you. So this past Sunday through Tuesday, the New York State Council of School Superintendents held its winter conference in lovely downtown Albany. I was able to attend Sunday and Monday. There were 6 strands of content. Number 1 was diversity, equity, and inclusivity, because this is a work that we are all very much committed to doing statewide. Second strand was around supporting social and emotional health for students, staff, self, and families. There was another strand around aspirational leadership, another around crafting learning opportunities to kind of shift post-COVID to support students, but also to start thinking forward, like where do we want to go next? There was another section around relationship building, supporting aspiring new early career and veteran education leaders. And the last one, at the March conference, we always spend a lot of time talking about effective advocacy because we're in the midst of budget development. So it was a very well-attended conference, terrific programs, and I was glad to have the opportunity to go. And my last item on the information section anyway is just to point out that we have our Guilderland High School Players performance of Disney's Beauty and the Beast this weekend. They'll take place at 7 p.m. on March 9, 10, and 11, and at 2 on Sunday, March 12th. The show is presented under special arrangement with Musical Theater International. Tickets went on sale online February 25th, and any remaining tickets that are available can be purchased by clicking through the attached link that you all received. So you don't want to miss that. And then over the past recent weekend, I think by miracle of good luck with horrific weather, we had all 3 shows of Matilda Jr. on March 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There were 85 cast members, 15 tech and stage crew members involved in the production. I just want to congratulate everybody who participated. I want to give a shout out, of course, to the students and the crew who performed and put the show on, but Cliff Nooney and his crew need a big shout out for creating an amazing swing in the middle of the stage. I'm not quite sure how they did it, but it was quite a feat. And I also want to recognize Mike Laster, who I guess is a kind of a closet baker and didn't realize that. But we had high anxiety about Friday night's performance because of the snow that was predicted. And then Saturday, we had no power, but the show must go on, and it did. So congratulations to everyone.
Great, thank you, Dr. Wiles. Next, we have board president information. I have 2 items listed. One is the Capital Region BOCES annual meeting. It's scheduled for March 29th. It's a Wednesday at 5:30. And they are going to do a 1-hour tour of the new CTE facility at 4:30. And if anyone on the board is interested in attending, they can, is that good, Linda, to contact you about that? Okay, thank you. And next, I have a set of policies, A through D, for information, and should be up then, I think, next time for action. Moving down the agenda to...
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Rebecca, sorry.
Can I just ask a question on letter D?
Sure.
I was just curious why there's crossouts about calling the controller's office and the toll-free hotline. Does that just not exist anymore?
Yes.
It just doesn't exist anymore? Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have action items. First, we have school business. Andrew?
Thank you. So our first item is mechanical equipment purchase. This is materials that we needed for a capital project. The price goes up today. We had a letter of intent in already. So if we approve this, we save 7%, which is almost $70,000, I believe. So this is a good example of getting ahead of inflation.
Great. Can I have a motion to accept the mechanical equipment purchase? Nate, second. Judy? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Judy, go ahead.
Good that we got it in time. You know, we found out and were able to take advantage of that.
Cliff is on top of things.
Yes. Thank you. All in favor? Passes 9-0.
All right, next, we have a college in the classroom agreement. This is with Hudson Valley Community College. It's an agreement we've had in the past. It makes available college-level courses to high school students. It's a wonderful opportunity for students to get college credits, in advance of entering college, gives them some more rigorous opportunities.
Can I have a motion to accept the agreement with HVCC? Rebecca, second. Katie, any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Passes 9-0.
All right. Next are two service agreements with programs and services for students with disabilities whose needs are best met through alternative education programs. They're continuations of agreements we already have in place. One is with the Charlton School, a residential school in Burn Hills that provides services for girls grades 8 through 12 who have behavioral, social, and emotional needs. The second is with Oak Hill School in Scotia, which is a private therapeutic day school for students in grades 8 through K-8 with significant emotional or behavioral challenges.
Can I have a motion to accept the service agreements with the two different schools, Blanca, second, Gloria? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. The next is an emergency preparedness sheltering agreement. This is a continuation of the emergency preparedness agreement we have in place for our district to serve as an emergency evacuation site for the clients and staff of Our Lady of Mercy Life Center. Because they are close to Golden Elementary School, it makes sense for the district to serve as a sheltering site for the program. As this agreement serves to benefit clients and residents in times of need, I recommend approval.
Can I have a motion to approve the emergency preparedness agreement? Kelly, second, Nate. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
All right, the next is for third-party Medicaid billing services. Management Advisor Group, who has served as our administrator for the past 9 years, has discontinued its service, so we issued an RFP, and based on that, we're recommending the district use OCM BOCES for the service for the 23-24 school year.
Can I have a motion to approve these services? Blanca, second, Rebecca. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. The next is emergency contract transportation services. We can award these when they arise for a period up to 1 month without competitive bidding. This case, we have a new enrollment at Sanford Street teaching in Glens Falls.
Can I have a motion to approve these transportation services? Nate, second, Judy. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. The next is an extension of an existing emergency contract transportation. This is for 3 contracts that serve McKinney-Vento students, looking to extend them for up to another 31 days.
Can I have a motion to approve these transportation services to be extended? Kim, second, Blanca. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
All right. Thank you. The next is a budget amendment for the school lunch program. As Marie mentioned in our presentation, the school lunch fund is entirely separate from the general fund. During COVID, because of changes in use, different expenses, reimbursement rates, the program has built up a very large fund balance that needs to be expended and can be expended on a very defined restricted use serving the food service program. So this budget amendment would allow for additional spending of funds on materials and facilities that would better serve our program.
Can I have a motion to approve the budget amendment for the school lunch fund? Nate, second, Rebecca. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. All right. The next item is reinstating the Gilliland Pop Warner Football Scholarship Award. It would be 2 $500 scholarships given to alumnus of the Pop Warner football program and a graduating alumnus of the Pop Warner cheer program. Scholarship award criteria include, but are not limited to, academic achievement, scholastic and extracurricular involvement, athletics, community service, and character.
Can I have a motion to approve these scholarship award? Kelly, second, Katie. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0.
Thank you. And finally, I recommend the acceptance of a donation from Stephen P. O'Connor for costuming of the high school musical Beauty and the Beast, which Marie spoke about. Mr. O'Connor has a grandson who is in the performance and is donating money to support the costuming.
Can I have a motion to approve the donation from Stephen P. O'Connor? Rebecca, second, Blanca. Any questions or comments? Yes, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor? Passes 9-0. Great, thank you, Andrew. Next, we have Superintendent in Action, Dr. Wiles.
Okay, thank you. This evening, I have 3 action items. The first is a recommendation to appoint Mr. Neil Sanders to serve as the election chair for our May 16, 2023 budget vote and election.
Can I have a motion to approve the recommendation to appoint Neil Sanders as the election chair? Kelly, second Katie. Any questions or comments? Neil can't escape.
No, we cannot.
All in,
He's qualified.
all in favor? Passes 9-0.
My second item is a recommendation to approve another co-curricular club. This is Dungeons and Dragons at Farnsworth Middle School with Mr. Kenyon as the advisor.
Can I have a motion to approve this co-curricular club? Rebecca, second. Nate, any questions or comments? All in favor? It passes 9-0.
And my last item is a resolution for approval to accept a grant that reads, resolved that the Board of Education of the Guilderland Central School District authorizes FMS Assistant Principal Kelly Willits to accept a grant in the amount of $10,400 awarded through Connect Kids Field Trip Grant Program. This grant is for a field trip to Wild Play at Thatcher State Park.
Can I have a motion to approve the grant acceptance? Judy, second. Blanca, any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. It passes 9-0. Great, thank you, Dr. Wiles. Next, we have Board President action. We have a list of policies, which I think we're all up for information before A through, V. Can I have a motion to approve this set of policies? Kelly? Second, Nate? Does anyone have questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Passes 9-0. Next, we have board committee reports. We'll start with business practices.
We have not met, and we do not have one scheduled at this time.
Okay. Next, we'll have audit.
We have, our next meeting is Monday, March 27th at 8 a.m.
8 a.m., right? And we're at FMS.
At FMS.
Okay. Who else am I missing? Policy.
We haven't had a meeting since the last board meeting, but we have a meeting tomorrow.
6 p.m., right?
6 p.m. Yeah. To look over some long policies. So.
Yes, there's a lot of...
Long work session. Plan for a couple hours.
Is
I'm not
there...
joking.
Communications.
We met on February 15th. A couple of items on the agenda. One, we finalized, as Dr. Wiles already referred to, the community engagement process, which will be 2023-24 budget. We'll have 2 sessions, online sessions for elementary parents and community members, one for high school and one for middle school. And these will be held on March 20th. And Dr. Wiles, I believe you're getting the information out on that and publicizing them so people can sign up. Of course, this will give some time for people to mull over your presentation tonight and come up with some questions if they have them. We will have an administrator on the online discussion, as well as a building principal, so that questions can be answered as they come up. We'll try to cap the sessions to about 20 people to make it manageable. And this will all be put on our website, the district website, as soon as we're done. So we'll roll it over to that so people can watch it at their leisure. Follow-up discussion, Patrick Malowski from BOCES shared his PowerPoint, some ideas that he has for social media to highlight some of the various programs within our district, especially leading up to the budget in May. The committee gave the go-ahead for him to continue that. We made some additional suggestions as to some things he might want to look at, and some positions like teaching assistants and aid monitors and custodians, things like that didn't make the first list. So we want to make sure that they are highlighted as well. And we also talked a little bit, Patrice talked a little bit about the winter newsletter, which will be coming out in March. About, I think, March 20th, she said.
Actually, we're ahead of schedule, Gloria, believe it or not. We're ahead of schedule, so it's going to be going out soon.
Well, that's a good news.
I know.
It's an 8-page document. It's going to highlight, the overall theme is inclusivity, and it's going to highlight the focus is why for the budget. You know, why are we doing the things we're doing? Why do we need the budget we need to support the programs that we have? And the last item was we began discussion about having a prospective board member workshop. This is something that's come up a few times, and we thought this would be the year to try to do it. We proposed the date. The committee came up with a date of April 3rd. And this would be a workshop for prospective Board of Education members. So if you're thinking about maybe becoming a board member, this would be a meeting you'd want to attend. It's before you collect the petition signatures and things like that, and to answer some basic questions about the role of a board member, and to kind of get some more people maybe interested. So we're proposing April 3rd for that meeting, and Andrew and Marie will work out putting the program together so that we'll have something that will be usable for everybody, useful for everyone. Our next meeting is March 27th at 4 o'clock.
Great, thanks, Gloria. And last, DEI?
We met.
Oh, go ahead, Katie, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot who I'm looking at, sorry, go ahead.
We met and we discussed the fireside chat at the library and ways that we could better help share out information to the community to increase involvement in these events, or just understanding of what the goal of the events are for people in the community to come and share their thoughts with us on the DEI committee. We also celebrated the ways that the district honored Black History Month throughout the district. We went over some of that as a group, and we've changed our format. We will be recording the meetings and sharing them out as opposed to having them live streamed. That was, the group met about that and decided that that would be best for everyone, and really it's how most of the community was viewing our meetings anyway. We're going back to the recording later, so we'll be switching that format. And again, our continued effort on trying to increase student involvement and how we can hear from the community and students for the larger committee. Did I miss anything?
I just wanted to add one thing for that committee meeting. It wasn't on the agenda, but there ended up being a discussion about field trips and just trips in general. And I think my takeaway from that there was a bigger discussion to be had, or people were interested in, and we didn't really have time for it. But I think because it's an issue of equity and there are all different kinds of trips that happen across the district, that it would be, I don't know, probably good to consider setting aside like a time to talk about that, or figure out where the right spot is to have that discussion. Gloria, were you going to say something? Sorry, I just hear the mic, so I wasn't sure. No?
Oh, I'm sorry, I left it on. You know, could I ask one question? Nate referred earlier in the meeting to something that's I don't know where it is, if it's in our weekly report, but the anti-hate policy. Is there a place I can go to read whatever Nate was referring to?
It's on the policy committee meeting agenda for tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
Great, thank you, Katie. And we have another, did you say the next DEI meeting date?
I did not.
I don't remember. I think it's on the calendar, but I just don't remember.
3/22, it looks like.
What's that?
March 22nd.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, that's the whatever time.
And, oh wait, I already said audit. Did I get all the committees? Yes, okay, sorry. So next we have public comment number 2. Linda, is there anybody else signed up? Nope, okay. And last but not least, board issues, ideas, and sharing. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Blanca and then Rebecca.
We can let Rebecca go first.
Okay, Rebecca and then Blanca.
So last Tuesday, nearly a dozen GHS students participated in the Moms Demand Action Advocacy Day at the New York State Capitol. They participated in 7 meetings with Capital District legislators and staffers, and with their work and the work of the area Capital District Moms Demand Action Group, they were able to secure several co-sponsorships on bills that they supported. So
Awesome.
I'm very proud of them. It was a snow day, or it wasn't a snow day, it was a late day. And they got about 10 students to go.
Wow, that's awesome. I have a comment related to that, but I'll,
You can go first.
so I know that in the email, we got a resolution kit where we fill out the survey and how we agree about the resolutions. I haven't gone through the whole thing yet, but I think you may have seen in my email that I thought I'll go through it and look for those two things that we had talked about. One was, if there's not something about gun safety, about maybe potentially drafting a resolution, that NYSBA has like support for that, and how to draft that resolution, because it's not due until July. So first, I think would probably be to go through and look and see what's already in that resolution kit, and then second, the talking about having what the parameters are to have a virtual meeting, and not just because sometimes we all like to have a virtual meeting, but really because it's an issue of equity and access, that there are a lot of people who are working and can't always make it to board meetings, but would like to participate. And so, again, we could look through that kit and see if there's something we could, if there's a resolution we could draft, if there's not something there already. So I just wanted to mention that. I know the first part of my comment was related to you, Rebecca, so go ahead, Blanca.
Okay. Nope, I wanted to reiterate what Marie said, which is friendly reminder that Beauty and the Beast is this weekend, but I also wanted to thank the custodial staff because they have been staying very late. Some of these rehearsals go until 9:30, almost 10 o'clock at night, and the custodial staff has been sort of doubling as an audience, and so thank you to you for all of your hard work, and I'm really looking forward to the show this weekend.
Awesome. Nate?
Just so I can stay in the good graces of my oldest daughter, I'm going to reiterate what Marie said. All the people that took part in Matilda Junior this weekend, great job. They were very proud of all those students. They did it. It was really fun to see it.
I think it's wonderful. I have 85 kids participating, and they find ways to have all of them participate. I've always loved that.
That's great. Yeah, and somehow the snow the power came back in time, the snow ended or started later.
I'm an inch shorter, though, after this weekend, I'll tell you.
Any other board issues, ideas, and sharing? No? Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Nate, second, Kim? All in favor? 9-0. Thank you, everybody.
Sorry.
Fill out your board.